Alright, we're going to continue with InDesign Classroom in a Book, Chapter 4, working with objects. When we left off, we were working on generating captions. We're going to go ahead and drag and slide to select those 6 items again. I'm going to go to Object and Captions and Generate Static Caption. And now you'll see I've got my photo by and my author, so I've got my photo credits for each of my elements. I'll go ahead and push Saved. We're going to go ahead and do a few more things with some graphics. We can actually create what's called a parent-child relationship between different types of graphics, which means one is the master and all the children will do whatever you do to the master. So it makes it really easy when you're doing things like want to change a logo or have an element you're going to use throughout your publication. We're going to go ahead and start with the content collector. It's about the 5th tool down. It's going to say, okay, we have this content conveyor. What do you want to have? I want to have the yield sign and I want to have this circle. It's going to say, okay, now what do you want to do with them? I know I want to go to my pages and I'm going to go ahead and put it on page 3. I need these elements as well. I'm going to go under my tools and grab my content placer tool. And I'll slide over a little bit. I want to put my yield sign, it's going to go up here at the top, and I'm going to use my circle down here at the bottom. And that's all I have, so I go ahead and close up the conveyor. So I can decide, okay, how does this parent-child thing work? Let's go back to page 1 where we had the original version of the circle. I'm going to grab my selection tool. I'm going to decide, okay, it's not popping enough. I want to add a stroke. I'm going to add a white stroke, which is considered paper, and I'm going to go ahead and make it 5 points. So now this element right here has a white 5-point stroke, and I know this element is again on page 3, but I can see when I click to page 3, I get this, I'm not getting the same thing. I'm getting an exclamation point, which means this has been modified. So in order to get it to update, I go ahead and click. And now I get that parent-child relationship. I could go ahead then and make the outline purple. I could do a lot of different things to it. As long as it's a parent-child, you can manipulate it and those changes will fall through. Alright, I'm going to decide I don't like my yield sign is red. I want it to be yellow instead. So I've got a new yellow graphic. I'm going to go to File and Place. I'm going to make sure I've got Replace Selected Item selected. If I don't, then you'll just get the other sign on top. And I want this yield new.ai and push Open. And now I have the yellow yield sign instead of the red one. So once again, I get that modified graphic note, so I'm going to click it, and I get the yellow one instead. So that's why you want to use those parent and child relationships with that part. Next thing we're going to do is change the shape of the frame. Let's go ahead and go to this page 3. We're going to change the shape of this blue box, this blue frame, so that it's got a couple of white fields on it, so it makes it so we don't have to create a separate box on top of these items. So one of the first things we're going to do is grab our direct selection tool. We're going to go to this intersection right here between the guide and the page. Now notice that nothing's happening. That's because my layer is locked. So I want to go ahead and lock my graphics, unlock the background, because what we're doing is manipulating the background layer. So now you see when I hover over that intersection, I get a pointer with a line. That says go ahead and select this path. Next I'm going to need a pen tool in order to add the anchor points. So let's go ahead and grab P, and I'm going to add a point right here at that intersection. And I want to go down to this section right here where the intersection meets, and I see that little plus sign, I say add another point right there. Now I'm going to go ahead and edit, deselect all, or just click out in here. Alright, I'm going to grab my direct selection. I'm going to select my box here. I'm going to grab this top corner and I'm going to bring it down until I meet the guides that make the rectangle around this article. So what I've done is basically undone the blue that was right there. So instead of putting another box on top, I have created one less thing. You want to always create one less than one more because it makes your documents less complicated. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to add this yield sign to this article. I'm going to grab my selection tool. I'm going to make sure that I lock my background, unlock my graphics. I'm going to grab my yield sign. I'm going to make sure that I have a pointer, not a hand. I want the pointer so that I grab the actual box that it's sitting in. I want to align that between the two columns. Now you'll notice right here, I just put the text over top of my columns. Do not try and resize your columns. We're going to use a text wrap in order to make this work. So let's go to Window and Text Wrap. We have a few different options up here at the top. If we select the first one, it says wrap around the bounding box, which means it's going to wrap around the edges, which is fair, but then you get this, remember we talked about the trap negative space, which we don't really want. So we're going to go to the next one, which is wrap around shape. But you'll notice it really didn't do anything. I want it to wrap to both sides, and I want it to, instead of clipping, I want detect edges. So now you'll see my text is coming in at an angle a little bit, but it's still cheating those margins. Remember we talked about not letting your text touch the graphics. So we're going to add a little bit of inset space, a little bit of padding. Think of it as bubble wrap for your graphic. So I'm going to do 1P and hit return or click outside, and notice how now I've got this red line which shows that I've got a little bit of extra space around that. I'm going to hit W, click out, and hit W so I can kind of see, okay, that's a shortcut for switching between the preview and the normal modes. Alright, so that's another way to get the white space. I'm going to go ahead, grab my selection tool, grab my circle graphic here, and move it in, intersect to the intersections. I'm going to go ahead and grab my rectangle tool. And we're going to do what's called working with a compound shape. We're going to go ahead and drag a box around that article where we would want the white to be. I'm then going to shift. I'm going to make sure my background is unlocked. My graphics are locked because we want to work with this background layer. So graphics and background are unlocked. I'm going to go ahead and undo. With my selection tool, I'm going to hold down Shift. I'm going to grab the frame I just made and the blue box frame. Then what I want to do is go to Object, go to Pathfinder, and nothing's happening. Why is that? Let's go ahead and make sure that this is on that background layer. So now let's click, Shift, click. We should get both of those objects. Object, Pathfinder. Okay, now we want to subtract. So it basically said, from this blue, I want to create a field of white instead. Alright, so now we've messed around with the background enough, we're going to go ahead and lock that. Next thing we're going to do is add some shapes to this line in here as kind of a divider. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my rectangle tool, not my frame. And you'll notice it's saying, no, you can't draw here. So I want to make sure I'm on my graphics layer. I'm going to hold Shift so I can get a perfect square. And I'm going to drag it out till I've got about 4.0. I'm going to let go of my mouse and then my Shift key. That way it will not resize. I want to go ahead and go up here to my fill and make it white, which is paper. The next side, I really don't like the rectangle there. It's kind of, or the square. I want it to be a circle instead. So what we're going to do is go to Object, Convert Shape, and we're going to make it an ellipse. An ellipse is a circle. Now notice that it still stayed 4 by 4. So that's pretty awesome. Alright, so now I want a row of dots straight across. I could copy and paste in a line and do that, or we can use the step and repeat. So with the circle still selected, we're going to go to Edit, go down here to Step and Repeat. Now we have to put the horizontal number in first, which is 5P6. We need to make sure the vertical is at 0, and we want to have 8 of them happen. And we're going to say OK. I'm going to close that test trap. So now you can see I've got all of these elements right here. They are perfectly aligned, perfectly spaced. Everything is wonderful. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and we're going to click out, cancel. I'm going to switch to my selection tool. I want to delete the third one and the 8th one. Now, what I can do is use the align functions to now line these things up for me. So I'm going to drag and select, so I've got all of them selected at once. I'm going to go up to my align tools up here. Or we can open the align panel. And we want to go ahead and do distribute horizontal centers. We click that, and now it's going to space those out evenly for us, which is kind of cool. All circles now have an even space around them. Alright, so how can we add some rounded edges to things? Let's go ahead and go back to page 1. So pages, go to page 1. We can decide we want this in this issue to have a rounded corner instead. So we're going to go ahead and go to our layers. We're going to unlock our text layer. We can go ahead and lock our graphics layer. And we want to grab the box that in this issue is in with our selection tool. You can zoom in if you want to. Alright, so then we're going to grab this small yellow square right here. It's slightly below, and we're going to get 4 yellow diamonds instead. We're going to take and pull that in, and notice how it rounds all 4 of those corners for us. Just kind of beautiful. Alright, that looks good. Let's go ahead and push save. Alright, so if you remember on page 4, we have this upside down logo we still need to work with. So let's go ahead and grab and select that logo. It's not doing it because it's on the graphics layer. Go ahead, unlock graphics. So you can see that by working with layers, it prevents a lot of accidental mistakes happening. So we're going to go ahead and click on that. We want our reference point to be in the center. So we want it to move from the center. And we want it to rotate, which is up here, 180 degrees. So we just flip it right on over. So that makes life really simple. You don't have to do it all by hand. Alright, let's go ahead, and we still have his head that's kind of crooked up here too, right? So how can we fix that? We're going to use a selection tool, and we want to use the content grabber, which is the donut in the middle. And if we go outside the box, we get rounded arrow, and we can kind of straighten him out a little bit. Alright, so now it doesn't fill the frame anymore, which is a bit of a problem. We're going to go ahead and do constrain proportions, which is this box right here. We want to make sure it's locked. And let's go ahead and we want to scale it by 55%. So right here, we're going to put in 55, and down here it does 55 as well. So now we get a big head, and we can use our content grabber. We can kind of move him around a little bit. Decide maybe that's a little too big. Let's make him 50 instead. That seems a little bit better. Alright, so now we've got him filling. We've rotated a few items. He's a little pixelated now. You usually shouldn't take a small object, make it big, but we're not going to mess with that too much. Alright, so next thing we want to do is go down to page 3. So let's go to our pages, which is technically page 2 in our document. We want to do a couple different things to our page 2. We've got all of these different icons right here, which are kind of a mess, and all need to go over here, which is a bit of a pain. You don't really want to move each one of those individually. So we can use the align functions to help us with that. Let's go to Window, Object and Layout, and we want Align. So just like we had them before on the control bar, now you've got them here in a panel. We're going to go ahead and use the selection tool and hit the, we want to align evolve and partial test calendar. So first thing we're going to do is click both of those. So that's a text, so we need to unlock the text. So we get both of those. We want to go ahead and align horizontal centers. So align horizontal centers. And that's going to move that to the middle of this box right here, which isn't too bad. So now it's aligned over that. What we can do is if we make this box with our selection tool, escape, let's grab this one, make it the full width. It will now put them both in the middle. So notice that it will align to whatever the size of the box is. So that's something you've got to remember. Alright, go ahead and push save for that. Now we want to go ahead and play with lining up these boxes. So we want to make sure we are aligning it with this object. So we're going to go ahead and click it first. Then we're going to go ahead and shift drag all of these. So hold shift and drag down to cover all of those. We want to go ahead and align to a key object. So what we're going to do is pull right here. We want align to key object, which is in the center. We know what our key object is because it's the first one we selected, which is the blue. And we want to go ahead and align to right edges. And notice how it did all of those at once for us, which is pretty awesome. It took a lot of the guesswork out for us. Alright, I'm going to click on my paste word and deselect all, Control S to save. I'm going to go ahead and grab my zoom tool and zoom in. You're going to notice that the Acrobat symbols right here are bigger than those of our Photoshop and Illustrator. So we want to make those the same size. We don't have to do them individually. We can scale multiple objects at one time. So what we can do is hit Control and Shift and grab both of these at once. Then we're going to go ahead and with our Shift key still pushed, we can, that's moving them, we want to go ahead and that's still moving them. We don't want a line on right now. We want this one, we want this one. Alright. So what I did was I clicked the top one, I shift, I clicked the bottom one. Now I've got my alignment tools. I'm going to grab this and bring it in. Now if I just bring it in, I'm going to get Funhouse going on. We don't want that. We want to do Control and Shift so it will maintain and auto fit as we go. So I'm going to go ahead and let go. It's still a little bit big, so I'm going to do it one more time. Shift and Control are holding at the same time. And bring it up a little bit from the bottom. Alright, then I can take and move it. See, I get my smart guides that show whether or not I'm aligning to what. And now it's basically about the same size. So that's pretty cool. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and push Control Save for that part. Alright, now I want to go ahead and play with page 2 a little bit more. So I'm going to double click there so I get the center. I want to go ahead and add some icons up here about the different types of programs that I've got available. So one of the first things I'm going to do is go here to my Adobe InDesign sign. I'm going to go ahead and I need to copy it. So in order to do that, we hit Alt and hold and drag up, and it will make a copy of that element, which is pretty darn cool. So we want to make sure we grab the other ones as well. So I'm going to grab Alt, Photoshop, bring that one up, I'm going to grab an Acrobat, Alt, drag, and an Illustrator, Alt, and drag. So I've got all 4 of them kind of up here at the top. I'm going to go ahead, let's move this one over to this guide, this guide, over to this guide a little bit. And you notice those smart guides that pop up for you help you line up things. Okay, let's move this Illustrator so he's, there we go. And let's move Photoshop over this way a little bit. That looks fair, but not awesome. Let's move InDesign over just a tiny bit. Alright, so what else can we do? We want to go ahead and change that InDesign one a little bit. We want to go ahead and grab him. We want to set the reference point at the center, which is what it is. And in scale, which is right over here, we want to go ahead and choose 200%. So we want to make it 200% bigger. And then we want to change the angle a little bit to about 30 degrees. So let's go ahead and grab 30 degrees. That's kind of cool. Alright, so now I would have to go through and do those individually, but I don't have to. I'm going to click and drag and select those 3 icons. I'm going to go to Object. I'm going to go to Transform Again. And we want Transform Sequence Again individually. And notice how it did those for us automatically, which is pretty awesome. Alright, so let's go ahead. They're not quite lined up now, kind of different spaces in between them. I'm going to grab all 4. I'm going to go to my Align panel. So I can go up here to the top, or I can do Window and Align, pull that back open. And I want to go ahead and align to selection. And I want to distribute horizontal centers. So distribute right here. Vertical centers, we want horizontal centers. So now you see it made nice space in between each one. And what we can do is use our arrow keys and nudge those up just a tiny bit so they're not sitting exactly on top. Alright, let's deselect by hitting the pasteboard and pushing save. Alright, one of the next things we need to do is play with this Evolve logo. It's kind of ugly right now. So let's go ahead and do Fit Our Spread on Window. View, Fit Spread on Window, just so you get in the practice of it. I'm going to go ahead and dock this Align over here. Something I might need later, so I can go ahead and dock it. See how it turns into a blue line? So I can find those later without having to go into Window. Alright, so next thing we're going to do is play with this Evolve logo here at the top. Right now, these objects are called grouped, which means these are individual elements, but we've put them together so that they'll all move as one. So we're going to go ahead and select our content that's up here on the control panel, and we want to do Select Content. So it's selecting the 0 right now. If we go up, kind of crossways, it will choose the individual elements of that object for us. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and use the Direct Selection tool and hold Shift, and we're going to select the letter V, the letter L, the other V, and the E, because we don't want those to be blue. The blue's not popping enough. We want it to be white instead. So we're going to go up here to the top and grab our paper and hit Paper instead. And now our letters are white instead of blue, and they pop a little bit more. So you can work with a grouped object without having to ungroup it. Let's go ahead and push Save, Control S. Let's go back to page 4, and we're going to add an element here to our customer testimonials. We want to make kind of an arrow here. So we're going to go ahead and select our line tool, and we're going to draw a line between these 2 columns. We need to hold Shift as we draw it, because it will ensure that our line can't go crooked. If you don't, you end up with a jagged line, which we don't want. So I'm going to grab my tool, hold Shift, click and drag until I've got something that's that wide. Alright, So we want to change the fill color to none, which we've got as none, but we do want to have it be black. So now it's black. We want to go into the stroke, and let's go ahead and make it 4. Now that's the simple things. There's more stuff we can do to a stroke. So let's go Window and Stroke. And a whole bunch of other options come up for us. So we want to go ahead and say we want the first end, the starting end, to have this circle, the solid circle. And we want to say that the other end is going to be this curved arrow. But maybe we don't like the size of those. So I'm going to decide, okay, I want the circle to be even bigger or even smaller. So I'm going to make it 75%. And I want my arrow to be even bigger. So I'm going to say 150%. So make it even larger. And I'm going to click out on my pasteboard, and notice it made it even bigger, which is pretty cool. So remember, all that stuff's hiding in stroke. You're not going to find it up here in your control panel. Alright, we're nearly done. Right here, we need to add a QR code to our publication to make it easy to make this interactive. So let's go ahead and go up to grab our selection tool. Let's go to Object. We want Generate QR Code. We want to go ahead and put in the address of where they want the person to go to. For us, for now, it's for adobe.com. We choose color. You can choose what color you want that QR code to be. Clearly dark is easier. And we're going to say OK, and it's going to generate that QR code. And we're going to go ahead and put right here above our Scan More for more information. Go ahead and select out. Let's go ahead and go cancel. Let's go ahead and do W for window and take a peek at all the different things that you did to create this newsletter today. Not quite done though. You need to go File and Package. Make sure that we have no errors. We're going to say Package. It's going to say OK to save. I don't need the instructions. I'm going to do I'm going to do first initial, last name, Classroom in a Book, Chapter 4, Packaged. I'm going to make sure I'm saving it in my Chapter 4 folder. And I'm going to tell it, yes, I want all these elements, and to package. Then after it packages, that's what you're going to be going to zip and go to, so I go to my lesson 4. I've got my packaged file. I'm going to right click, going to send to, compress zip folder. It's going to zip it, or it's a compressed folder for the Mac. And make sure you're turning in this zipped package file. That's all.